Welcome to Brohala Gaming, where the focus is on gaming, fun, and friends. I'm here with Jason and Matt, and we're finally going to start talking a little bit more about Warcrow, the war game by Corvus Belli.
Finally,
And
right?
Finally,
Finally,
we're getting around to it. They've had it out
know,
for a little bit, but yeah.
we've had it a little bit. It literally came out at the worst time for recording for all of our just life. I started football season as soon as it came out, and that was it. No recordings happened, but things are starting to slow down a little bit. So I've been itching. To do this, to talk about this war game, to talk about the lore. I'm excited.
Me too. So today we're specifically going to talk about the Northern Tribes a little bit about the lore and background. Show a little bit of the map of Lindworm, which is the universe, the world in which Warcrow takes place, and then talk kind of about the cards that come in the starter box, which is called Winds from the North. So, who would like to start talking about Northern Tribes?
So I've read a little bit of the book, at least the Northern Tribe part. Very, very interesting. Shout out to Corvus Belli and the entire Warcrow team. I'm very much enjoying the lore. The writing is fantastic. It's really good storytelling. We're starting with the Northern Tribes because honestly, that's what I'm playing the most to start. So
yeah,
if I'm playing it and I'm recording, we get to do what I want to
do. I mean, yeah, I've been playing his other half, so
yeah. So Matt's been playing the hegemony, and
I know the Northern Tribes only because they keep beating snot out of me.
It's because I'm a really good war gamer.
Yeah.
Matt, roll better.
Yeah, that's about it.
So, Northern Tribes. These guys are orcs. I personally have never been a big fantasy orc fan. I tend to gravitate toward the humans more in most of my like Lord of the Rings, things like that. But the sculpts changed that for me. The sculpts were amazing. And I was just like, yeah, I want to paint this stuff. So that's why I'm interested in Northern Tribes. They do have an interesting backstory. So they are a tribe that have occupied the Boreal Lands for a very long time. They were the first to make their home in the icy areas of the north, as you expect most northern territories to be. Very wintry, very treacherous terrain. And they do have an ally. And we're not going to be talking about that ally too much other than just in reference because the Northern Tribes are two different factions, as I would call it.
I'd call them races. They're actually
two races. Yeah. So we have the Orcs and we have the Varric. We're going to focus on the Orcs, but you can't tell the Northern Tribe story unless you include the Varric in it. So the Varric came to the Boreal Lands in a lot smaller waves as they left their northernmost reaches, and then they abandoned their area during the Civil War, which ended the Elven Empire of Gaelisail.
Yeah, so Varric essentially, if I could expand just a little bit, the Varric lived on the main continent, which is where all the humans live now. Previously, it was the large Elven Empire of it's either Gaelisail or Gaelisail, Gae. I'm not sure exactly how to pronounce it, if it's Gaelic or what the inflection is. But when that Civil War happened towards the tail end of it, that's when the Varric broke up into smaller groups and started fleeing to the north, and that's when they encountered the orcs that were already living there.
And they formed an alliance, correct?
Yep.
Yeah.
And basically they eventually head south, form an alliance. They cross the northern seas, and essentially they are forming this alliance to conquer land. And that is kind of their purpose. They're kind of I get a Viking feel from them. They're pillaging. They're a conquest type of nation.
It's very much a Norse feel to them.
Yes,
like,
absolutely.
The leader of the Varric is even referred to as Jarl, so it's very much so a Norse inspired
which is also probably why I've like drawn, because I love Viking Norsemen. I love that stuff. So here we have the map of Lindworm. So we're going to be kind of focusing on the top of this map, where the northern tribes are. And I do have my mouse pointer. Next time, if I actually do this, I might actually have a way to like highlight my mouse. I know there's software for that sort of stuff. But we're up here, and we're going to be talking about kind of some areas where the northern tribes kind of started and then ended up going to. And from my lore, so they started up in the very, very northern parts of Apo. And then they started to make their way south. So Apo is kind of up very, very north where my mouse cursor is. And then they start making their way south to peat bogs, which is down this peninsula, which eventually they start moving over to the Isle of Chains, which is directly east of that spot.
Mm-hmm.
And then so the head honcho, as I understand it, is the Ice Bear, right?
Well, there's two. There's one for the Varink, and that is Ice Bear. That's Alwart.
Yes,
Jarl Alwart. And then there's one for the Orcs, and that is the Wrathmane known as Alborg. So those are the two that actually have come, basically forged this alliance to get Orcs and Varink working together, and they're the ones moving in force because there's something moving into the Boreal lands. There's a fog that's moving in, and they're trying to get away from it because they have no idea what's going to happen if they stay in it.
Mm-hmm.
And we haven't really talked about like what really started all of this with the fog. That is a kind of overall lore, which we're not really covering. You definitely have to read that if you get your books. But so we are focusing strictly on the northern tribes, and not necessarily the entire beginnings of Lindworm and where that started. So they started at the Isle of Chains, and they immediately go east to conquer Grotjard. I think I said that right.
Yep. Yeah. Grotjard.
So they start here where my mouse cursor is, and they go east to the where you see where it says Knoll. That is a capital city of Grotjard. And they go conquer that. Alborg takes it. He makes a lovely, lovely fortress of Grotjard to stake their claim, and so now they are on the mainlands of the south.
So one piece of that I'd like to add is that they actually took all of Grotjard from the dwarves of Mount Haven.
Yes, they did.
After they realized that the dwarves are like, you guys can have it, they actually did sit down and sign an agreement giving Grotjard to the northern tribes.
Yep. And as I understand it, the dwarves don't like the hegemony of Embers either much.
I don't think the dwarves like anybody.
Yeah, well, sounds like a dwarf, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, so that's kind of like the lore as I understand it. Obviously a lot of war, a lot of tumultuous times. The Orcs as a people, an Orc society, they tend to be pretty to themselves. They have families. They start their young very, very early in war and learning war. And we'll get a little bit more into that when we start talking about the cards and things like that.
I think that's a real good high level lore conversation.
Yeah. Which we can move right on into cards and everything.
So how this is kind of going to roll, we are going to talk about the core box, Winds of the North, and we're just going to be talking about the Orcs that are in that core box to start. And as we continue on, as releases happen, the plan is to be talking about each the lore that is associated with that box that has been released, and then we'll get into the gameplay part of it about what the cards mean, how they potentially could play on the battlefield. There's a lot of keywords in this game, so we're going to go over all of that to start off. So without further ado, let's get after it. So the first is our basic infantry unit of Orc Hunters. They are a 20-point card. They're 20-point unit. This unit is 4 actual models that are on the table with a unit leader. As these cards are constructed, at the top we have our base stats. We have our movement, which they are a 3/2. And in brackets, they have 10. And we'll talk a little bit about what that means. But that is their charge value. We won't go into details right now what that means, but just know that's what that means. There are 2 wounds each model. They have a willpower roll of an orange dice. They have a morale of 1, and you can take 3 of these units in your list. They're an infantry, which I don't necessarily know that there's anything specific with that keyword other than they're an infantry. Maybe Scott can elaborate on that a little bit, but I don't think there's anything else that goes with being an infantry other than it's an infantry unit.
As far as just base rules having that, no. However, there is or can be at some point like the join keyword that can be coming up. Where you could potentially only join infantry.
Actually, I think that
might have that.
I was just saying, I think Hegemony has that where one of them can only join infantry,
like human infantry or just infantry or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So just real quick, that top line there. Well, actually, there's only one line on this card, but you'll see. Just if you could flip to the next card just for half a second, please.
Sure.
Thank you. So you'll see there you have the top line and a bottom line directly under the main stat block. The top row is characteristics, which is basically a description for that unit, and the below it is specifically the keywords. And that right there, you can see they can join Orc infantry.
No, they can join infantry or Orc.
It's not quite the way that actually works. It's a slash line if it's this or that. If it's a comma, it means you must satisfy both.
That's
Yep.
Words than you expect.
See, we're going to learn things as we're going through this, which is why this is good. All right, so back to the Orc card. So to the left on that first black line, the second black line technically, you have a 3+. So that means that you are going to use that stat line if you have 3 or more units still alive.
Models in the unit.
Sorry, models in the unit. Okay.
Correct.
On your left is your melee attack. Orc hunters can only do melee. We have 1 red die, 3 orange dice, 1 yellow die, and the chance of successes, red dies are higher, oranges are next, yellows are the lowest. They have the lowest hits on them. Red dice, I believe, has 2 strikes available or 2 hits on it on one side. I'm not sure 2 successes. I'm not sure the orange dice does. I don't remember if it does or not.
No, red is the only one that has 2. Yep. Has a single facing that has 2 successes on it.
Yeah.
And then under that, you have your switches, which depending on how many roll, depends on how many times you can actually do that. Now, granted, you're only going to be able to give your target the vulnerable state one time anyway. And vulnerable, Scott, remind me of that rule. I was going to put a slide up for that, but remind me what that rule is for vulnerable.
Really, you're going to ask me?
When you're vulnerable, when you're vulnerable,
it's 1 less defense dice.
One less defense dice, and then after you've rolled with that 1 less defense dice, your state goes away. So if you have to make another defense roll later, you're not still vulnerable. That only happens like any of those states that you get, like vulnerable or slowed or disarmed. Yep. They only affect you 1 time, then it goes away. You can get it again, but so if they were to attack you with the vulnerable state and you roll your defense dice and you lose your 1 dice, that state goes away, so that if another
at the end of that activation,
so then if another unit attacked you, you're no longer vulnerable.
So it's not rolling 1 less
back on you.
It's not rolling 1 less dice. It's just canceling one of your blocks. No, I'm reading it right now.
Oh, okay.
Your unit must cancel 1 die from its defense rolls in which it has rolled at least 1 block.
Yeah,
correct.
In case of the multiple dice, your opponent will choose which one. Must apply this effect after rolling the dice with all possible repetitions, but just before starting the switches step.
Correct.
Yep.
So really good ability. I've used it. It's what you would expect a killy unit to want to give an opponent.
Yes.
Which is what you really want to give Hegemony. And we'll talk about that next time. But these guys are the killers, Hegemony are the blockers. And that's how they designed it. All right, so the next is your defense. You have a green 2 black dice, and on a block, you add 1 hit to your roll, and I believe that's for every block you roll. Is that the case?
It can be, provided you spend the block for the switch. So any symbol you spend on a switch cannot be used later in the resolution of that roll.
Gotcha.
So you could give up your 3 blocks to inflict 3
wounds
hits to the Hegemony unit, but you don't have 3 blocks then.
So the advantage of that is if you Hegemony has maybe 1 hit left and you have enough to get, maybe you roll 2 blocks, maybe you spend 2, add 2 hits successes to your roll and take the 1.
Correct. It's possible.
Well, and it's a good way to put those hits onto Hegemony, because like you said before, Hegemony's thing is they just block the snot out of everything. So you as orcs with your 2 wounds per model, you have 8 wounds to play with, and you can absorb wounds in order to put those hits onto those Hegemony units that they're not blocking. Because otherwise, when you're attacking them and they're rolling their defense dice, they're blocking most of your hits. So it's a strategy that you can use, but it does come at that cost of, I'm going to sacrifice maybe 1 model, 2 models. But I think it's
a timing thing. It depends on what state they're in.
For the strategy of it, yes. The part that I really love about it is this is an amazing way to show from a thematic standpoint that these guys are reckless and don't care about themselves. They just want to do damage to their opponent.
Yep.
Absolutely. Which is what we would expect orcs to be. All right. So to the right is you see a number 1. That is your conquest value. So that is what it takes to control an objective. So essentially, if I have a conquest value of 1, and we're not going to talk about the timing of this, I suppose we could, but and say that whoever's contesting with me of the opponent has a conquest value of 1, we tie. If I'm already controlling that objective, I continue to control that objective. If it's a conquest value of 2 of the opponent, they now control that objective.
And just real quick, the one thing I was going to mention there is that the conquest value only comes into play if it's a contested objective.
Correct.
If the orc hunters move up to try to claim an objective where there's no enemies within 3 strides,
they get it.
They just get it. You don't have to compare conquest to anything else.
Yep. On the bottom side of that is if we have less than 2 or less models on the board, now we are down at that stat line. It's basically the same things with just different dice. Less dice, not as effective. Defense is not as good, but your switches are still the same.
Well, your switch costs 1 less,
and your switches are easier to get.
But
it's just the survivability part of it.
Yeah.
Again, speaking from a thematic standpoint and this is kind of going to Jason, what you said earlier about like how the lore and everything is just really, really well done in this book. The game mechanics here are tied to that lore as well. If you think about it, any unit is, you train with each other to be effective at full strength. Or even slightly reduced strength. And that's what that top stat line is. As soon as a unit reaches half strength or lower, that's when they start losing their effectivity. And that's where you go to that lower line. So I really like the way they've represented that in the game overall.
Yeah. And I've enjoyed it too. I think it's a cool way to like, hey, you're getting weaker, but these are the things that you still can do. These are the things you cannot do as well.
Exactly.
Just like a real battle would be.
And the one comment I'll make on that as well, because the rule specifically is you kind of regress to that lower effectivity at half strength. The early cards here for the starter box do not represent or print what the starting number of models are in a unit. some of the later printings, like I think the Tundra Marauders and some of the other stuff, do have that printed value in the lower left corner. This one, or anything where it's not printed, if you take the lower line value and double it, that's your starting number.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because it represents what half is.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, absolutely. So that's the stats of the Orc Hunters off the top. From a playable standpoint, here's what I've found with these guys. Yes, they hit hard, but I found that they do not. If you're going against another hegemony unit, getting damage through is very, very hard.
Mm-hmm.
What I have found success with these Orc Hunters is to occupy and get engaged with somebody so that they cannot move.
Yeah.
That is where I have found them to have the most success, and we'll talk about when we get to the wise main what you can do with that in order to help that out. They are not going to survive as long as the bucklermen are per se, but if they can tie somebody up or tie up a hetman,
well, and
I found that really helps.
That's kind of their thing. I mean, their charge value being 10 versus I believe the bucklermen are like 8. Means that you're going to get the charge in before the bucklermen do. And that charge really makes a big difference a lot of times. And like you said, you charge in, you're not going to maybe kill the bucklermen, but now they don't get to charge you. And that makes a huge difference. The bucklermen need the rerolls in order to get their damage through, and the Orc Hunters don't. So that's kind of their thing. And then, strategically,
Matt, I'm sorry, finish, please. Sorry.
And strategically, the switch of putting vulnerable on, again, when you're going against like bucklermen and stuff, putting vulnerable on them is really a big thing because now they're losing one of their blocks, which they just block and block and block. That's what they do.
They block for days.
Yeah.
Just to kind of mention mechanics, you're saying that charging is really beneficial. I just want to mention that on a charge, you have the ability to re-roll your entire attack roll after you roll it the first time.
Mm-hmm.
It's not one or, so that's the re-roll you're talking about. It's
yes. Yeah.
If I don't like what I see, I can scoop up all those dice and re-roll it again.
Yep.
But it is all or none.
Yeah. But it's a big
deal.
And in the games that we've played, I'm usually playing the hegemony, and that's the thing I run into is if I'm not getting the reroll, I'm not getting the hits. So
it's still a dice game.
Yeah.
And dice are fickle. Fickle.
Yep.
And that's the great thing. I mean, I found a success. Tie up your opponent, tie up a hetman so he can't do his thing. I found is very successful.
Mm-hmm.
You'll find as you play this game, timing is challenging.
Mm-hmm.
Of when you activate, how far you go. There is a very big thing you have to keep track of is like when the opponent can clap back on you, who's going to get that first attack in, and movement's a very big part of that.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a conversation for another podcast. All right, So Orc Hunters, basic infantry. We're going to move on to our lovely Wrath main.
Yes,
he is a character.
He
is the Wrath main. I can never say it right, but whatever. The Wrath main. All right. He is a character. He is high command. He is an orc. He has the keyword join infantry, orc.
Yep.
He is elite, which we'll talk about, and he does have raging. His movement is a 3/2 with a charge of 10, which is exactly like our orcs. He is a 5 wound model. He has a willpower of 2 orange dice. He has a morale of 2, and he is availability 1 on the top side of his card. And he also has 2 command points to spend, which is the under his 30-point value is where those command tokens are.
Mm-hmm.
We'll just go through the other stuff here quick.
Just real quick, if I could though,
Yep,
if you look at the picture at the very top there's a small icon directly below his face of a helmet.
Yep.
That helmet denotes every character is either going to have a helmet or a scroll. We'll see the scroll later when we get to the evoker.
Mm-hmm.
The helmet specifically means that they are an officer, and when you are creating your force, like when you have more than just the starter box, the full rules are you will choose an officer to make your commander. Then you recruit the rest of your army. in this case, the model that says high command, they have to be your commander. But there are other coming out officers that are not high command. If you include high command, they have to be your commander. Otherwise, let's say you have 4 normal officers, no high command, you get to pick any one of them to be your commander. So that's what that officer denotes. The other piece to that, if they join an infantry, any officer will become the leader of that unit.
Mm-hmm.
Support will not. Support will just join it, and they're like every other extra infantry model in that unit. So, and the officer when they've joined, they also add that model to the count.
That's what I was just going to say. Officers count towards the number of models,
yeah.
Whereas the support characters don't count towards the number of models. Correct. They're just there.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, if you take this Wrath main, Jason, if you could go back to the Orc Hunters real quick, please. So, if the Wrath main joins this unit, that's now a unit that is 5 strong to start on the table.
Mm-hmm.
And the character, the officer, will always be the last casualty to be removed.
Well, in this box, yes.
Yes, in this box.
There is a character. Yeah,
Leia?
there's a character that in the expansion that
with their headshot
and take out the leader.
Yes, unless there's damage dealt directly to the character. If it's just to the unit itself, then that'll be the last casualty.
And that's a special attack for her.
Correct.
That you have to spend points and stuff. So
correct.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Sorry, Jason, I did cut you off.
No, you're good. That's good stuff. No, that's the stuff that I don't have fully memorized, which is why you're here. All right. Other keywords at the top there, we have raging. That keyword means that your unit adds successes to its attack rolls when it charges.
So how many?
One success. One success.
It adds a single success.
Yeah.
And then we have elite, and that is stated as once the dice have been rolled, rerolls included, and before advancing to the switches step, your unit will replace a hollow success with a filled-in success, and any hollow block with a filled-in block, and any hollow special with a filled-in special. And I said all of that right.
Yes, you did. Good job.
Yeah.
And it's not just one, right? It's like if you had any hollow blocks, they are all now.
Well,
yes.
If you choose, you get to make the choice.
Yeah.
Because it's may, not must.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the reason I say that is if you look at the switch under the Wrathmane's attack, you can spend a hollow success to inflict a wound directly.
Yep. That they can't.
So you may not want to switch that.
You may not want to change that to a filled-in success. So you've got reasons to do that.
And correct me, you can do a single switch as many times as you have the trigger for it. Correct.
Yep. As long as you still have symbols to spend.
3 blank hits or empty hits like that, you could spend all 3 of them and do 3 direct wounds.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
So when you inflict something, it cannot be canceled with a block.
Right.
It's given.
It's just there.
Yep.
All right. Continuing on the card, we're going to talk about just what dice they're rolling and what their melee switches are. So we have 2 red dice, an orange, and a yellow dice. On a hollow success, you are inflicting 1 wound to your target. On a hollow switch, hollow special.
Yeah.
Hollow special.
Yeah.
Your target receives the vulnerable state. Again, more vulnerable, more fixing dice, which as we war gamers, we love fixing dice. We love fixing our opponent's dice. Now, before we move on to the next portion of this, you'll see a lightning bolt, plus a hollow success and a filled-in special. So what that means is that if you choose to stress your unit, you gain those 2 items to the right of the plus. Benefits and negatives to that. Stressing your units is not necessarily a good thing, depending on where you're at. Sometimes you may want that to finish off an opponent. You're willing to make that sacrifice.
And just to clarify, because if there's people that don't know the rules and they hear that, they might get confused. You don't get that if you're stressed. during the attack, you have a chance where you can choose to add stress to get that special.
It's called modify. You can modify your roll before the dice are rolled.
Yes.
So you have to make that decision before any dice are rolled.
And it's one of those things where like in the Wrathmane's case, he's got a morale of 2. If he's already got 2 stress on him, correct? He can't do that because he can't add stress at that point.
Correct. You cannot knowingly go above your own morale.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's kind of one of those things you got to kind of pay attention to.
Important to note on the right. So we're going to go to the defense. Same thing. We have 2 blues and a black. And then if you choose to stress, you can add a red dice, which is an attack dice, and a filled in success. Basically an automatic success. Plus you're rolling a red dice if you want to do something back to your opponents. Pretty standard. A lot of these kind of named character or these high command types have this option in the Orcs, as we'll see as we go forward. To the right of that, you have a conquest value of 0. So if there is somebody with a conquest value of 1 on your opponent, you do not control that point unless you're the only one there. So keep that in mind. If you take the Wrathmane and do not attach him to anybody, which is what we're going to talk about on the bottom side. But first, before I go on to that, we have a command token that he can spend. It is Wrath Roar. This happens once during your activation. An enemy unit within 10 strides receives the Frightened and Disarmed states. Frightened, this is the first time we've talked about it. So that state is your unit must reroll all of its success willpower tests, maximum 1 per test. Remove the state when you pass a willpower test. And then Disarm is your unit must cancel 1 die from its attack rolls in which it has obtained a at least 1 success.
Yeah. So Disarmed is the opposite of the vulnerable.
It's the comparable, but for attack.
Yep.
It's for attack versus defense. Yeah.
One clarification I'll make here, that in that, does this qualify to be able to use Wrath Roar? When it says your activation, it doesn't mean your as the player. It means your as this unit.
Yeah.
Okay. That's cool.
So
and you can spend command tokens.
Only use it when the
Wrathmane's activation.
Correct.
Yes. So second part of this, there is a bottom part we're going to talk about. So this bottom part, as I understand it, this is where you can choose to attach the Wrathmane to another unit. So for simplicity's sake, let's say that we are attaching this to an Orc unit. Okay, so what happens is that he still throws a willpower. Your unit has a willpower test of those 2 orange dice plus the Orcs willpower dice.
It's
just
the
Wrathmanes.
Okay? If we look at any join profile, which is the bottom half of any character that is able to join, if it's in addition to, it'll have a plus sign. Like you see the morale, the attack, and the defense are all pluses. Same with the conquest value. If it is an absolute value, such as 2 orange dice, that's absolute. It replaces the unit's value.
Yeah. So in this case, if you're adding the Wrathmane to the Orc Hunters, your willpower is now 2 orange dice, but your morale is now, what were they?
They're 1. So now you're at 2.
Which
is a big deal for those guys.
Yeah. And then their conquest value is also now
2.
Okay. So they're a little bit stronger. You gain the Wrathmane's switch abilities, which there is a different ability replacing the hollow special, which is displace 3 your target, which I'm assuming means displace 3 strides your target.
Correct. Yep.
Which is, you could compare that to like a push mechanic for MCP. That's probably the most comparable game I could come up with that. And his other additions, he automatically adds a success on his melee attacks. If you stress him, you get a red die plus an automatic success. On defense, you can stress him and add a extra red dice, and you get an automatic block.
One clarification is you're not stressing him, you're stressing the entirety of the
unit. Yes, it's the entire unit if he is attached.
Correct.
Command token spend Wrath Roller is the same. So that is essentially how that mechanic works. As we go on to other cards, then as you go on, you have, and you doing your points, you have choices to make on what characters you are going to join with your units.
Because a unit can have one and only one character ever joined to it at a time.
Yep.
Now you can have multiple characters join other units. So like a Wrathmane could join an Orc unit. If you have a second Orc unit, a Wisemane can join that Orc unit.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. But you can only have one unit.
1-to-1 in it. It's a 1-to-1 ratio.
Yep. I personally have not played the Wrathmane very much past the starter scenario. Just we've been playing higher point games, so the points values don't work for it. So I don't have a lot to offer as far as strategies. He's a high wound model. He puts out a lot of damage. He's cheap. He's only 30 points. But obviously, when we get to Alboric, you'll see that how the difference is. But I would say a pretty standard Orc character, high command units, and you can attach if it works for your strategy.
And just real quick, you can do that attaching the joining, because it's keyword join. You can join at deployment, when you're deploying. You can join during the game. You can leave during the game. So you can change up your strategies, go in with that strategy in mind. So there's lots of different ways to play that.
Yeah, like you could have an orc hunter unit that is down to 2 models, and your Wrathmane could go over and I'm going to join in, and now they're back up to 3. So they get their bonuses back and stuff.
Or on the flip side, if your unit's about to die,
he can leave.
He can leave. And then he is still a 5 wound model.
Yeah.
That's what I've also found is potentially, especially if you're going against somebody that can shoot characters in their group, you're going to want to hightail it out.
Yeah.
All right. So that's Commander. So we're on to the Wisemane. And the reason why I went to the Wisemane second here is because there's a little bit of lore that goes with this. Scott, can you explain that lore? You do a lot better than I do.
Yeah, sure. When a Wrathmane gets kind of long in the tooth there, hasn't died in battle, is getting up there in age, they don't, like you hear about stories where, an older alpha gets challenged and they get killed and left. The Orcs don't do that. They actually will have them kind of retire, but move into the Wisemane role because they want to be the, that elder statesman and be able to give their advice to the new younger Wrathmanes coming up. So that's where the Wisemane comes into play.
All right. So looking at the card, he's a 15-point model. His move is a 2/3, so it's opposite of the 2 cards we just learned. So his first move value is a 2, and then he can move again for a 3. His charge value is 9, so his effective charge is a little bit lower. Wounds 3, willpower, roll of an orange and a yellow dice. He has a morale of 1, and you can take only one of him. Keywords: he's a character, he's an Orc, he has Fearless, and he can also join an infantry or an Orc. Fearless is your unit
and
infantry and Orc.
Yeah,
you have to satisfy both conditions.
Yep.
Fearless. Your unit ignores the effects of intimidating and is immune to the frightened state. Intimidating, if I remember right, is the morale check.
It is a morale check, yes.
Yes. So basically, he doesn't run away.
Yeah, he's there to stick.
He's there. He is. So you Infinity fans, that is like being religious.
Yes, religious. Good job.
Those of you listen to the podcast, Scott just gave me a great look. It was fantastic, but I'm a Pano player, so I had to go there.
Is that because we were Team Religulous?
We were Team Religulous.
You guys were Team Religulous.
But we digress. We're not talking about. We're talking about this game.
Super fast before we move into that line.
The
Wisemane is where you'll see the scroll.
Yes.
Which means he is a support character. So when he does join an Orc infantry, he does not count towards how many models are in the unit when you're determining if it's above half or below half.
Right. And that's important. I've been the hegemony player, and I have a support character that doesn't do squat other than help that unit. And when you lose your first model, that's fine. But when you go to lose a second model, you have a real choice to make of, do I keep my support unit and go down to the stat line of half or lower, or do I say sayonara to my support unit and he's now dead, but I still have 3+ models? So it's kind of one of those things where the support units, that's something you have to pay attention to, is that, like he said, they don't count towards that stat, but they are a model that's part of the unit. So when you choose who's dying, you can make that choice. Do I stay with 3+ and keep using that stat line and get rid of my wise main, or do I keep the wise main and drop down to 2+, even though I have 3 models?
It's part of that strategy to the game that I just love. It's those little choices that actually aren't so little, because they have real impacts on how the battle's going to play out.
Yep.
And real quick, intimidating. If a unit has intimidating, as soon as you engage in combat, your opponent has to take a willpower check. If they fail, they become stressed. They add a stress to them. Yep, in this case, if his opponent is intimidating, he doesn't have to make the test. He's seen it all in his age. He doesn't care anymore. He's basically like, bring it, let's do this.
Yeah. I believe frightened is you don't run away.
And this is, I mean, we want to talk somewhat about some strategies with using these characters. When you look at his stat card, you can clearly see he does okay on his own. He's not as good as the last guy, but he really shines when you add him to a unit, because now he gets the voice of experience and the charisma and wisdom stuff. He also is adding more value to that unit versus your last character, the Wrathmane, isn't really adding to, it's replacing. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So this is one of those characters that when you're looking at and you're taking him, I would say probably, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but I would say probably 9 times out of 10 you're attaching him to something.
Right now in the starter
I would
box,
round that up to 10 out of 10.
I would say right now where we're at is 10 out of 10.
Yep.
Right now. But so let's go. We're going to quickly go over the stat line for his melee attack. If you stress him, you add a red dice and a filled in success. His base attack is a red, 2 orange, and a yellow. His base defense is a blue and a black. If you stress him, you can add an attack bite bat, and also you can spend 2 of your specials to give this target a vulnerable state. If you attach this lovely older gentleman to a unit, you are adding a yellow dice to a willpower check. So notice there is a plus on that. So you are adding 2, if I'm not mistaken.
So now you're an orange and yellow.
So you're an orange and a yellow. His morale goes up by 1. On his melee, you're still rolling his attack dice from the top. Is that right?
No.
You're just rolling the You're just rolling the orc dice.
You're using that bottom
units. You're using the units.
You use the units dice, but he adds in an automatic success.
Correct.
On defensive side, he's adding. If you're stressing, you're adding a red dice and an automatic block. You can spend specials to give the target their vulnerable state in attacking and defending. Here's the plus. He adds also Conquest value 1, but he also adds a command token spending, which is the voice of experience. When your unit rolls attack or defense, fix the result of 1 die from your roll. Very, very powerful, I found.
Very.
And then he has a passive ability called Charisma and Wisdom. So this can happen anytime you activate this unit, as I understand it.
Not even when you activate it.
It's
just always there.
It's just always there. So your unit gains fearless and may repeat their whip rolls. Your unit may avoid being pushed back without suffering stress.
Yeah. That's just now their characteristic.
So we'll go back to this. Do you attach this guy? Absolutely. Do you ever use this top stat line? I think right now in the state of the game as is right now, very rarely, if probably never. He's cheap. He buffs your orcs. and he makes them a lot tougher on the table. I am attaching this guy right now every single time.
Now, this is a rule I'm not familiar with. Can you, if he's attached, could I unattach him and then move over and attach him somewhere else?
Not in the same activation.
No, but I mean like during the game.
Yes. Absolutely.
Yep.
So that might be the only time that I would see him by himself is he left one unit to go to another unit.
And I think it's tough because I mean we don't know yet. We haven't played high point enough point values to really get a good grip on that. I mean that's 2 activations to get him to do that, so that could be kind of a waste. What I have found though is that I have a tendency, I think there's a point in the game where you want to get him out of the unit if the unit's about ready to die. He doesn't count as a conquest value, but at least he doesn't, like, if you get 4 shot, at least it's 2 units to deal with.
Yeah.
Now you could frighten, and I believe when you leave, you keep the stress of the unit. When the wise man disconnects, you keep the stress of that.
You keep all states and stress.
All states and stress. So I haven't played enough games to really get a good feel about when that happens, what the benefits are yet.
And when you're in a part of a unit, this is another one of those ones that I would have to look up because I don't know. Does your wound value drop to what the unit's wound value is?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's a reason why you want to get him out of there before the unit gets destroyed. Because while he's part of the unit, he's a wound 2 model instead of a wound 3 model.
Correct. Because he's support, that means you can remove him as any casualty on that unit. Yeah. So as soon as you amass 2 wounds or more, you'll remove a model from, because we're talking about Orc Hunters. Yeah. The Orc Hunters with Wise Mane, you can choose to remove a regular Orc Hunter, or you can choose to remove the Wise Mane. If you do, you're absolutely right, Matt. He just went from a 3 wound model to a 2 wound model because 2 wounds had him removed.
Yeah, and strategically, I guess the reason I'm asking is if you look back at the Wrathmane being a 5 wound model, is it one of those things that once that unit is destroyed, he just goes back to being a single unit?
Yes, because an officer, which is the Wrathmane and Alborg, because they have the helmet icon in their picture, they will be the very last model removed. So if you have, say, 2 Orc Hunters left and your Wrathmane in a unit, and you suffer 5 wounds, the 2 Orc Hunters are dead, and that last remaining wound gets placed on the Wrathmane's card.
And now he's 4. He
has 4 remaining.
Okay. I haven't ran into it yet because the only time I have anything attached, it's in my hegemony, and it's my
war surgeon.
War surgeon, and he usually is the second model that I take out of that unit. So
she
sorry,
and she is lactose intolerant.
Yeah.
No, that is canon. It is in the lore. She is lactose intolerant.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. So on to spellcasters. All right. We get 1 in the starter box. As of now, I think we are still only at 1 that have actually been released at this point of this recording. We have the Evoker. We are a support character. We have a move of 3/2. We have a charge value of 7. That's the lowest we've seen so far. We are Tomb Bump Moonwaddle. Our willpower is a 2 orange and a yellow. They have a morale of 2, and you can take one of these. Our keywords are character, Orc, and he is a spellcaster, and we have 1 command token to spend. This model is a 25.
It's not necessarily to spend. They add 1.
They add to the
pool.
Yes, correct. I said that wrong. They add 1 to the pool. We can do a melee attack, which is 3 orange. We have a block of a red and a black die, which only happens, it happens in melee or if you get hit by ranged attack. And we are a conquest value of 0. But that's not what you want these guys to be doing. You don't want them up in the mix. You want them doing really cool things. And this is one of my favorite mechanics of the game, which I'm really sad because of right now, my points value has not allowed me to take an Evoker unless I'm really low on it. So I haven't done a whole lot of it. but this will take a little bit explaining as we go. So we have 2 spells that we can cast. The first is the Spirit of the Thermoplurus.
Thermoplurious.
I was way off.
Samsonite?
Is that Samsonite? Way off.
Thermoplurus, not
thank you.
Thermoplurus. See, everybody's wrong. Thermoplurus. See, we're all learning. We're all learning. This lasts a duration of 4 turns. The target is an allied unit within 20 strides, and the target unit gains intimidating. I believe that's intimidating 1 in the brackets.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. And what that means is any unit that has to take a test because the unit is intimidating needs only 1 success to pass that willpower test.
So the next part, because I'm okay with this mechanic, but I'm not great at it, which is why I'm going to have Scott talk about the black die that gets potentially added to these to do this, and he will explain all of this that goes into it. We won't go into the horrible details of the mechanics, but they are pretty cool mechanics, and it's one of the reasons why I love this game right now.
Sweet. So essentially you declare that you're going to cast a spell as part of your action. You declare which
I'm going to cast Spirit of Thermoplurus.
Yeah, I'd say none of us can say it.
Yeah.
At that point is when you will actually declare whether or not you're going to I want to say modify, but I know it's not the right term because modifying is the other dice roll.
Access the tinge.
Essentially, you're digging deeper into the energies that grant you the magical powers. But by doing so, you run the risk of injuring yourself or not successfully casting the spell. So if you choose to alter, there it is. It's alter the spell.
I am going to alter the spell.
You can do either of these, one of them, or both.
And because I'm dumb, I am going to alter the spell to the max amount.
So in this case, Spirit of the Thermoplurus, you're going to roll not only your willpower dice to determine if you successfully cast, but you're also going to add 3 black dice to that roll. For, theme, what I do in games is I ask my opponent to do it because it turns it kind of into a face-to-face roll. In this case, if you look at that first one.
Do you need me to read it since it's smaller? You got it.
I got it. Thank you.
Okay. I don't know how.
I'm blind, but not that blind.
No. I just they're looking at this PowerPoint through a Discord stream. So I just want to make sure you can see it. It's nice and big on my screen.
It's super clear.
Okay, great.
So in this case, because you're casting this on an ally unit, because it says duration 4 turns, the target has to be an allied unit within 10 strides of the evoker. If it's successfully cast, then when that unit causes an intimidating check, that not only will your opponent, if they fail it, not only will they add stress to their card, but they will also immediately demoralize and have to flee. And that's a big deal to get a unit to break and run.
Yeah.
But here's the biggest kicker, that two black die alteration. Not only is it intimidating 1, but it changes it to intimidating 2, which means if, let's say, you cast this on the Orc Hunters charge a unit of Bucklermen. That Bucklerman now needs to pass a willpower test with 2 successes to pass it. Otherwise, they'll fail it, they'll gain a stress, demoralize, and immediately run away.
Yep. And what is
the
their
upside?
Willpower?
Depends.
Pretty sure that their willpower, unless they have somebody attached, is 1 dice.
It could be 2 if somebody's just even on the table.
Well, that's true. Yes, that is true.
But we'll talk about that when we get to the other one.
Yep.
So we've talked about all the upsides here. But wait, there's a downside.
Here's the downside, which is the greatest part of this whole thing.
Because these are black dice that are being rolled. Any block, so a standard filled in block, will cancel any of your successes on your to cast willpower roll. So there's a chance that the spell might not even go off.
Because you tried to make it too powerful.
There's an even worse upside than that, though. For every hollow block that comes up on those black dice, you gain a tinge. Tinge is not good. That is your soul and your body are being stained by the magical powers that you are tapping into. And the more and more you do it, the worse and worse it can get.
Yeah.
And here's how that comes into play in the game terms. For every hollow special you roll, the tinge will activate. And there is a tinge table that you look at how many tinge you have on your character. And it is specifically in step order. So any tinge you gain on this roll, if it activates, it counts for this immediate activation. And it goes anywhere from the unit gains 1 stress, I think is when you have 1 tinge. You can gain more tinge through it, all the way up to, I think if you have 5 or 6, I think 5 is the cutoff. You explode, and you can do damage to other units around you.
Yeah, and also game mechanic wise, when you have tinge markers on your character, when you go to cast spells in the future, they add a black dice to your willpower roll in the future as well. So if you do what I did, and I'm going to make it as powerful a spell as I can, and I roll my 3 black dice and say I get 1 tinge out of that, I now have 1 black dice going forward on every future spell that I do. And that doesn't add the powers from that 1 black dice. It just means that I now have an extra black dice I have to deal with.
Correct. Because you're dabbling too much in the arcane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So correct me if I don't want to add those 2, is there a tinge roll? Like, is there a base tinge roll, or is it just that happens?
Yes, but it's not called a tinge roll at that point. We had this discussion before. It's really weird. We call it a tinge roll because you're still doing the same thing. You still have to make your willpower roll to see if you successfully cast.
Correct. I get that, but there's no black dice against it. It's unopposed. That's what I'm getting at. It's unopposed.
So when you start with the character, essentially, if it's the first time you're casting, you have no tinge on you. You choose not to alter the spell. You're just rolling your willpower.
But if I roll a hollow special, that does not activate the tinge. It's only on a tinge roll.
We haven't gotten to blocking.
No, we haven't gotten that far yet.
Okay.
We'll do that. Gotcha. That happens on the next one, because this one can't really be blocked.
So this one can't be blocked.
Can.
So
you're right. I'm sorry. You're right.
It can.
You're right. It can. It's just not defense.
In our scenario right now, I'm casting a spell. There's no spellcaster within 20 strides of me. I'm just doing this.
Yep.
Now, we're going to take that a step further. If the enemy had their own spellcaster within 20 strides, and I declare I'm going to cast Spirit of Thermoplurus, and I'm going to make it 3 powerful wide, they now have the opportunity to declare that they're going to attempt to block it.
They can actually wait to see if the spell goes off.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah. It is a step after. Yep.
But if there is no spellcaster within, and you're just doing this on a unit, basically what happens, it's automatic.
It's automatic.
There's no roll. There's no nothing.
No. You still have to make your willpower roll.
You still have to pass willpower.
I get that. You still have to pass a willpower. But if I roll a hollow special, that does not act. It's only on a tinge.
Hold on.
Right?
Hold on.
That's what I'm trying to clarify.
What do you mean
so
by
if I roll my willpower.
Who's I? Are you the evoker?
The evoker. I'm the evoker. Yes. And I have a hollow special in my roll that does not activate the tinge. That's just seeing if I'm
on you.
Hold on. You're talking about a hollow special on the orange, or yellow?
Yes.
It will not activate. Thank you.
Correct. That's what I'm getting at. So you can only activate tinge on the tinge roll itself, which is correct. The black dice. That's what I want to clarify.
Now, one thing to add to that, if the character, let's say the evoker, already has 2 tinge on them right now before we start this casting.
Yeah.
And we choose to do the 2 black alteration at the bottom. Game mechanics, you can only ever roll up to 3 of the same color die. That 4th die becomes a blue die.
Which is not good.
Not good. Higher chances of a hollow block or a hollow special.
Now, I want to get back to what Jason was just trying to say, because I was getting as roundabout as he was. When I'm rolling my tinge roll, if I already have tinge on me and say that, so I'm rolling 1 black dice already.
Yep.
If I get a hollow special, it can be on any of those dice to activate that tinge, though, correct?
No, just the black
just
dice.
the black dice. Okay. That's where I was, because I think we've done it wrong in the past. So got it.
All right.
That's why I personally have found it very, very helpful to have my opponent roll the tinge roll, because it's so, Matt, if you and I are playing on the evoker, you're the hegemony.
Yep.
I will only be rolling my willpower.
Yep. And I'll
any of the dice I ask you to roll on the tinge roll, those are the ones that will affect if I gain tinge, if it helps cancel some of my successes on my willpower, and if we're activating a tinge.
Yep. Got it.
All right. So that's one spell. Our next spell, Summon the Rock. We're going to target an enemy with 8 strides. So you have to get somewhat close for this to happen. Resolve a ranged attack with a red, an orange, and 2 yellow against the targeted unit. So that's just base. I would assume that if I do this, that they can still roll their defense roll against this.
Yes, but
yes, yeah. I was just saying, let's go through order of operations.
Yeah,
you just have to again declare that you're going to be casting a spell. So you gather
Summon the Rock.
Gather your willpower. You determine if you have any tinge on you already.
I do not, because I was good last time.
Then determine if you're going to alter the spell at all.
Yes, because you happen to be 9 strides away.
Yes.
I'm going to put the first one on so that I now have a range of 14 strides.
Perfect. Now we will do
the tinge roll.
The casting roll.
Yeah.
So it's the willpower and the opposed tinge.
Yes.
We roll that.
Our other option, if we add 2 black die, after the resolving the attack, the spell gains the property remains active and adds the effect. The target and all enemies within 5 strides from it receive the slowed state at the beginning of their action. Slowed state means that you can use only your first move action, if I am correct. If I remember that. So you're essentially having your movement potential. Sometimes that's good, sometimes that's bad.
I believe you subtract from your charge range.
I believe that is true too. I think it's half as well, rounded up. Don't quote me on that though. I have to look that up.
I would also have to look that up.
So that's his attack. It's a decent attack. It does some damage. It's a give and take on whether you add
We're going to finish this operation. So
yeah, let's go to the order of operations. So
so now we've done our thing.
I passed my willpower. Woohoo!
Good job. Now, because it's successful, you know, even after canceling anything, what have you. Now we get to the point of, okay, cool. Let's resolve the ranged attack.
I got my red, my orange, my 2 yellow.
Correct. And then the unit that you have targeted will gather their defense dice based on what their stat lines, you know, and how many models are left in that unit. And it's a normal face-to-face roll, just as if you were in close combat. Now, there's one difference to that. The defensive or defending unit can only use defensive dice in that roll.
Yeah, they don't get to use, for those of you following at home, they don't get to use any offensive dice that might be in that roll, which makes thematic sense. I am attacking you from 30 feet away. You don't get to hit me with your sword.
Correct.
But
so in this case, if an evoker is shooting at another evoker, you look at his defense there, it's red and black. In that case, the defending evoker could only roll the black die. Because red,
that is still in
orange, and yellow
defense.
Yep,
it's still in ranged. Yep, that defense.
Now I have yet to see a ranged defense that deals damage back from a ranged.
You can't
ability.
They don't have.
I haven't seen one.
You cannot do it
as the game stands right now.
No, it is in the rule book.
Oh, okay. So it is in the rule book. Got it.
It is specifically in the rule book on the defense for ranged attacks. Now that doesn't mean that there couldn't be a unit in the future that overrides that.
Correct.
But as
that's more what I meant by that as the current state. Yeah. So before we move on to how we use this unit, we have one last thing on the card. We can spend a command token called for Delegate of the Ancestors. Once during the evoker's activation, within 20 strides, reduce by 1 the stress of an allied orc unit, or a demoralized allied orc unit rallies automatically. All right, so he's rallying the troops. He's It's taking that stress off. I think this is a pretty powerful ability. I have yet to use it because I think I've played the Evoker in the scenario 2 of the starter box, and that is the only time I've used him. So I can't necessarily say right now how I would use this unit as it is states right now. To me, on paper, I feel like giving conditions to others and rallying your units is probably going to happen more than me trying to kill you with this guy.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep. And theory craft of this, that's huge, because now you've got your orc unit that activated, and then you're going to stress them to activate them again. They can't do any more stress. But now this guy goes out there and, hey, I'm taking that one stress away. Now suddenly that orc unit has that ability to stress itself again.
Mm-hmm.
Boy, that's huge.
Yep.
Especially if he also gives that orc unit intimidating.
Yeah.
Yep.
With the spirit.
That's scary.
Yeah, definitely. I think he's a condition giver. I think the summon the rock is a timed thing. It may come up, but I don't think that's his bread and butter.
No,
as it stands right now. You got plenty of other things that can kill.
Mm-hmm.
Evokers helping those units out.
Yep.
All right, our last but not least, the man himself, Alboric.
Mm-hmm.
He is a 50-point unit. Ouch. He is a 50-point Wrath main, to be specific. Mm-hmm. Boy, was I confused on this when I first got it. I only have I have one Wrath main and 2 cards. How does this work? Well, friends, if you haven't figured this out yet, Alboric is a Wrath main. That model is used for both cards. You choose if you want the basic Wrath main high command, or you can go with our named character. And we know Corvus Belli loves its named characters. We have it in the Infinity lore. We have it here again. So he is a 50-point model. He has 3 command tokens to add to the pool. He has a move of 3/2, a charge value of 10. Very orc. Seems like a pretty common orc theme. He's a 5-wound model with a willpower dice of 2 orange. He has a morale of 3. You can only take 1 of them. He is a character. He is high command, orc. He can join infantries that are orc or infantry that are Varric. He can do
that's
either.
The difference there that you see that vertical slash. That's the or.
Got it.
And he is also elite, and we've already talked about elite. His stat lines for his attacks, he is a red 2 orange and an automatic success. If you stress him, you can add a hollow success and a fold in special. He only has switches on his attacks. 2 specials, cancels 1 block from your target. Add an automatic hit success to your roll. A hollow special, your target receives the vulnerable state. A hollow success, your target suffers 1 stress. On his defensive side, he is, if you can stress, you can add a red die and an automatic success. He is 2 blue. He is 1 black. He has a conquest value of 0. Before we move on, this guy hits like a truck.
Yeah.
I have seen him eliminate other characters in 1 dice roll.
Yep.
It can happen because of that automatic success. You stress him, he adds even more grossness. There's a reason why he's 50 points. There's a reason also why at this point, I don't attach him. I don't see a reason why you would, unless there's a thematic campaign reason to do so. Because he is way better on his own than he is inside of a group. We'll just go through quick what his other abilities on his card. He can spend a command token for the Warg and the Crow once per round. At the end of the activation of allied orc, or activate an allied unit Varric, and vice versa. The unit can only perform 1 action. It cannot be a long action. And it does not receive stress or an activation token. We have 2 passive abilities.
Wait.
War Alliance.
Before you go on to the other, explain what that means.
Sure. Is
like, in essence, you at the end of an activation of an allied orc unit. So hey, the orc hunter's moved.
Yep.
I now get to spend this token, even though I'm not the active person, and I can take an allied Varric unit.
And you can do one short
action, which essentially, for the most part, is a move.
Unless it's one that's already engaged, in which case they can attack.
You can attack for free, essentially. Yes.
So I mean, it's just a way to get an out of turn activation on a different unit, and it doesn't cost them an activated token or stress. That's big.
Correct.
It is a fantastic command ability. It's the one I've used the most currently. Granted, I have not had an evoker on the table, but it is definitely the most.
It's really good.
And well, as I've played this game, we're the last card now. Depending on the scenario and how many turns you get in a round, you're not going to get everybody up the board. And here's the thing with orcs, or the northern tribes in general. They don't have any ranged attacks. You have to get them up the board if they're going to do anything. So with a combination of these command tokens, plus your no unit left behind, no model left behind, I don't remember the actual terms, but those are the only ways those unactivated units are going to get up the board, which I have found is absolutely key to getting these orcs in the fight, especially if you're spending an activation to stress a unit to give them another one. Well, if I have 6 units on the board and we only have 4 turns, that's 2 units that maybe even 3, depending on how you do your stress, that aren't activating, that aren't doing anything. So this command token makes up for that. Timing's important. So you have to think about, what am I going to activate first, and what am I, because it has to be opposite. If you do an orc, you can only do a Varric. I don't think you can do another orc unit.
You cannot. You definitely cannot.
So you have to think about that too in your order activation, your action economy when it comes down to that. Very powerful ability. I think the game I played against Will, I think I spent 4 of my command tokens on this ability alone, and I spent it early.
That's about right, yeah.
Just to get them up the board.
It would have been 3.
3, yeah, because I think we were like, I had 4 units. I think we were doing a 160 point list, which I think I had 4 actual units on the board, but there were only 3 turns in a round. So, and he had 5, I think, so it was even worse on his end. Yeah, because their units are a little cheaper. So that's the really interesting part, because it's not like Infinity where you have the amount of units you have is the amount of activations. That's not how this game works. No. So really good. Now
you can talk about his other 2 passives.
So we have our passive ability. We have War Alliance. Until the end of the scenario, the characters that can join Orc infantry units can also join Varric infantry and vice versa. This effect does not stop applying even if you join a unit or are eliminated from the battlefield.
That is huge, by the way.
That is very big.
And it's one of the things that I also think that a lot of, like, as you're first starting to play the game, it's one that you're going to forget about because it impacts almost every other card out there, every other unit. It's not something that just impacts Alborg.
So, because
if he's got let's say the Wise Mane,
the
Wise Mane lists infantry, orc for their join keywords. Let's say you have a unit of skin changers, you can attach him to the skin changers that are Varric, only if Alborg is in the list as your commander. That's a big deal because
the other part
die on skin changers is
the second part of that is also really huge that I don't think people realize is that it doesn't stop if you eliminate him, because some of those abilities, if your character got eliminated, you no longer get that benefit. But in this case, you still have it. So that's huge.
On our last passive on this top part, Sword of the Sun, while you have damage, you gain Dispel, where D as many blue dice as the damage suffered, max of 3. Plus, you may add a yellow to your attack and defense rolls.
So real quick, let's talk about Dispel. That's the one piece we didn't talk about with the Evoker.
Yes.
After
the declare modification step, correct?
Alterations. After you declare alterations, if it is a spell that is targeting an enemy unit and that enemy unit has Dispel, they can roll whatever dice they have in their Dispel roll to attempt to block out and remove successes from the willpower casting roll.
Is it only? I didn't think it was only when they target an enemy. I thought it was anytime they're casting a spell, you could and you're within 20 strides. You can
that's only if it is a spellcaster trying to block.
Got it. Okay.
Dispelling is that unit has to be the target of the spell.
Got it. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's good. It's good. It's the only in the core box. It's the only unit that dispels. Because I don't think Evoker doesn't have a dispel either. So this is right now.
No, but the Evoker is
on the Northern Tribe right now. He's the only one that has dispel.
Yeah, by being a magic user, the Evoker doesn't.
He automatically has that ability.
Yep.
Yeah.
On the bot side, if you so choose, to attach him, where morale goes up by 1. We are rolling 2 orange dice. We are not adding to it. We have an automatic success. We have an automatic block. And we still have the Warg, and the Crow is the only ability we have to spend a command token. You do not get the passives. So as I see it on,
you still get War Alliance because it says
you do. Okay.
Even if you join a unit, it still counts.
Yes.
Okay. I kind of made an assumption that once you attach, you don't get anything on the top of that card.
Unless it says otherwise, in which case this War Alliance specifically calls that out.
Yeah, because that happens before I get what you're saying. Yep, absolutely. That's a good clarification.
And like you said before, it doesn't make a lot of sense to add him or connect.
I ain't putting him with anybody. He's going to wreck shop.
I'm sure there's a reason somebody's going to do it. But if you look at his conquest value, I believe with the Wrath main, they at least add 1 to the conquest value. He does not. So again, it's you're why are you doing it sort of thing.
Here's the only reason why I would consider adding him to a unit. Getting him up the board faster. And then
that's what I was just going to say.
And then pop him out.
Yep.
Yeah, I can see.
And actually, I just thought of that. That's why you add these guys occasionally, is to get them up the board, get them out of the unit, and then he's off to the races.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yep.
Especially if you have more units and you only have 3 activations per round. Like if you have 5 activations,
more units than activations. Yeah.
I think that is, and especially the way cover rules and line of sight blockers rules. We got a little bit of clarification on that this week. You're pretty safe if you're behind something or behind trees, so you can have that where you can disattach and be in pretty safe spot for the most part, unless you got to worry about scouts and things like that.
Correct.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Awesome. Any closing thoughts?
Orcs are fun. They're my kind of unit. I like brawly types. That's kind of what I gravitate to. I've enjoyed playing them. I'm looking forward to playing the other side next time we play. But then I have all these new goodies that I want to try. So it's like, why would I play something else? I got to learn the new goodies. My opponent can learn their side of the board and see what it's like.
I think thematically they've done a good job with taking what their lore is with the Orcs. Of these are hard hitting, fast hitting, aggressive troops, and they've done a good job of making that mechanic in the dice, the way the dice are rolling and the way that their rules are working and things. So I think it's fun that way. As the hegemony player amongst us, it's scary when they start coming at you. I can block a lot, but you lock me down pretty quick.
I mean, I think if you're not rolling the vulnerables against hegemony, it's tough. It's really hard to get through that their ability to block things. The War Surgeon also, like, we'll talk about this when we talk about the hegemony. That's a very powerful piece. It heals, they block. Vulnerable, you have to roll those specials to get that vulnerable state.
Yep. Now, as the player, I can tell you it's super frustrating. Because my units, yes, they survive, but they can't kill you. Like, they just don't. They're not great at that. And so when you get in as quickly as you do, it locks me in place and I don't get to go do what I need to do for scoring.
And I think what's going to counteract that is units like the Pioneers who
Yep.
have an out of activation push.
Yep.
That's going to be important mechanic.
Yep.
It's an important mechanic in Shatterpoint and in
Yep.
MCP.
Yep.
I'm guessing more units will have that ability as we kind of get more units and things like that, because that's I think you need that in order to get, if you can't kill them or if you can't win your attack rolls and push them off the objectives, then you're going to be really hard.
Well,
Pioneers at least give you that
move.
ability to push them off the objective
Yeah.
and score a point.
Yeah. I mean, the same thing with their magic user has a push basically. And it's the idea of, look, if I don't push you off of that unit, my unit cannot move, and I need them to move. So that's, I think you're right. Pushing and stuff. You're going to start to see it more when players start to realize, hey, I got to get this guy at least moved away so I can go off and do what I need to do.
Yep.
You know,
it's a common mechanic in these type of objective based games. We're seeing it more. I don't play Warhammer, but I'm guessing it maybe has something like that. But so at this point, I'm enjoying the Northern Tribes. The core box is a good box. It's a good starter. Once you get rolling, the thing that we're going to get into as we kind of go is all right. Well, right now in the starter box, you have 1 orc unit. Well, right now you can't, unless you buy 3 starter boxes, you can't have 3 orc units on the table as of yet. Which I think will be a list building mechanic that people are going to look at in the future of getting cheap units on the board and lots of them.
Yes, they will
pad your activations.
I'm assuming that
the orc unit will have its own separate box in
eventually
a few months.
Yeah.
I remember seeing it at Gen Con. They showed the outline of the calendar, and I don't remember how many months away that was.
Yeah,
but I mean,
they have to, because it's a core unit that you're taking multiples of. So yeah, they're gonna have it out as a separate.
But the thing to remember, you have 6 units on the table and you only have 3 activations in a turn or 4 activations in a turn. Somebody's not getting activated. You got to figure that out. So that's going to be the push and shove. And it's all good. And right now we're a campaign centric narrative type system right now.
Yeah.
We're not a wargaming system yet. We don't have an army builder. It is coming, but we are not there yet. So we're still playing the thematic portion of this game.
Soon,
I'm good with. Right.
Soon, TM.
Yep.
Soon.
Yep.
All right. Well, that's it. This is our first one. Many more to come. We're going to chuck through this starter box. We got tons of releases that have come out that we have to churn through. But that means that we got to start playing some games with this new stuff so we actually know what we're talking about.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So very soon.
That's all I got. Anybody else for the good of the order?
Nope. Just going to say thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah.
Next time. Thank you. Give us a like on all of our socials and on YouTube if you like what you hear. That helps us out, makes us feel warm and fuzzy inside. And also comment on their videos on YouTube. We love the feedback. You can also get a hold of us. We do have a Discord, so if you want to in our Discord, it is Brawlhalla Gaming. We can start sending links out if we see you on the interwebs and YouTube or whatnots. Till next time, this is the Brawlhalla Gang. Play some Warcrow.
Have a good one.
Have a good one.